Hey everyone, Theo here. Today I want to give you some tips on how you can prepare for the Urban Sketches Symposium should you decide to attend one. So I've been to 5 symposiums. My first one was in Barcelona in 2013, followed by Singapore in 2015. In 2016 it was in Manchester, 2019 in Amsterdam, and the most recent one that I came back from last week was in Auckland, New Zealand. So I want to make this video while everything is still fresh in my mind. Alright, the first tip is to save money because there are many costs and expenses involved, and the largest variable is probably going to be airfare, because the price of the airfare is going to be determined by where you stay and where the symposium location is. So if you stay nearer to the symposium location, obviously you don't have to spend that much on airfare, but if you stay like far away, then prepare to save more money. For example, my airfare from Singapore to Auckland, New Zealand was $2,000 US, which is quite pricey. For the Amsterdam trip years ago, it was around $1,300 US, which is much lower. And for Manchester, it's just $1,000 US. So many years ago, airfares were actually more affordable. The next largest expense is probably going to be hotel accommodation. So you have to budget for that as well. If you have friends going to the Urban Sketches Symposium with you, you can actually share rooms with them and you can save quite a bit on hotel accommodation. If you have the budget, I highly recommend you get a hotel that is nearest to the hub or nearest to the symposium venue, because there are many benefits. For example, you get to wake up later, so you get more rest. If you forget to bring items to the workshop, you can quickly run back to your hotel, grab your stuff, and come back to the symposium location. In the afternoon, if you're tired, you can quickly head back to the hotel for a quick afternoon nap. And if you buy stuff from the sponsor booths, or if you buy anything from anywhere, you can just quickly put all your items back at the hotel so that you don't have to bring those things around with you the whole day. I would say it's definitely worth paying a little bit more premium for the nearest hotel. Bring enough money in case you want to buy stuff from the sponsor booths. So there are going to be many sponsor booths selling this huge variety of art supplies and tools, so it's actually one of the best opportunities for you to get your art supplies at the sponsor booths, and you don't have to pay for shipping. Just make sure you have enough money and enough luggage space to pack all those goodies that you buy. Next, you have to budget the money that you need to buy the passes. For the Auckland Symposium, the workshop passes are $450 US, and for the sketch passes, they are $260 US. So they are quite pricey. It is possible to buy those passes at a discount if you are able to get them during the early bird period or the pre-sale period. So once you know when the sale of the passes will start during the early bird period, I highly recommend you create an alarm in Google Calendar to notify you 1 week or 1 day in advance, because those passes can sell out quite quickly. After the passes are sold out during the early bird period, you will have to purchase the passes at standard price when the passes are available for sale at a later date. Another benefit to getting the passes early is you get to choose which workshops to attend earlier compared to others who buy their passes at a later date. So that is actually the main benefit, in addition to being able to save some money on the passes. The next tip is on how you can get from the airport to the symposium location and how you can get around the city. So do some research first on the types of transportation available, such as shuttle buses, trains, or airport transfer, and find out how much they cost. And also find out how much the public transport, such as buses, trains, subway, metro, or Uber or taxi cost in advance, so that you can budget the money for that. Information on traveling can be found online very easily, and when there is a symposium, usually there is a FAQ page where you can find travel information listed as well. And for the Auckland Symposium, the USK committee actually set up this Facebook page or Facebook group where people can ask questions. So you can join the Facebook group that's going to be created for that symposium and ask the local sketchers things like transport costs, how you can get around, what types of clothes to pack, how much money to budget for food, and other related questions. The next tip is on the art supplies you should bring. Do not bring too much art supplies. Do not pack so much art supplies because chances are you are not going to use everything. So just bring along the art supplies that you use most frequently, and you will know just based on the art supplies that you are using when you're sketching in your country or when you're sketching with your friends. So just bring the essentials and maybe bring one extra pen and one extra brush because those are small items which you can lose easily. It's probably not necessary to bring an extra watercolor box because the bigger items are more difficult to lose. Anyway, you don't even need to bring backups because there will be the sponsor booths where you can buy pens and brushes and watercolor box sets. If you bring or pack along too many art supplies, you're actually carrying unnecessary weight. So it's good to keep the packing list tight. And it's also easier to keep track of things when you have fewer things to keep track of. If you are attending workshops, it's best to ask the instructor the specific art supplies or tools that you need to bring. And usually the tools and supplies are listed in the program or workshop booklet. So be sure to check out those supplies, and some of the supplies and tools may be provided by the instructors, but you will have to confirm with the instructor in advance. Since we are talking about art supplies and tools, you should definitely test your supplies and tools before you pack them in your bag. For example, if you bring a pen, make sure the pen has enough ink to last for the symposium. Otherwise, you will have to bring extra pens or extra ink, and make sure that the ink actually comes out from the pen. Make sure to test the watercolor paper. Make sure to bring good watercolor paper because at the symposium, you are not going to have time to experiment with your tools and the quality of your paper. So you really do want to bring the best tools and supplies, the highest quality tools and supplies that you can bring, that you can afford to buy to the symposium. Watercolor paint and watercolor paper are most commonly used at the symposium. I have a lot to say about watercolor paper, but the most important thing to know about watercolor paper is bring watercolor paper that can handle wet on wet techniques. More specifically, when the watercolor paper is wet with either water or with another color, when you add a second color on the paper, see how the color actually moves around the paper or blend with the paper white or with other colors. If the second color that you add can blend softly, that's good watercolor paper. But if the color just stays there and doesn't move, don't bring that paper. I have made the mistake of bringing a sketchbook with lousy watercolor paper before for some of my trips, and it was a disaster. So watercolor paper, more specifically, the quality of watercolor paper is very important. If you're not sure which watercolor paper is good, just go with the tried and tested brands: Arches, Fabriano Artistico, Lana Aquarelle, 100% cotton watercolor paper. And some instructors may require you to bring certain size of paper, so bring the correct size. So you can bring paper pads, which are probably recommended by the instructors, and you can bring along another small, maybe A5 sketchbook for sketching things before, after, and maybe during the symposium if you have time. Oh, if you are going to be sketching with pen, ink, and watercolor, make sure the ink is waterproof when dry, and as mentioned earlier, test your art supplies before you pack them in your bag or luggage. The next tip is on moving around and getting to places where you need to be. So if you are lost and you do not know how to use Google Maps or read Google Maps, don't worry, just use this tip. It's very easy. Just ask as many people as you see or meet on the street for directions. I'm pretty sure one of them will be able to point you in the correct direction. Now, usually for workshops, every participant will gather in the morning at this big area here, and once all the participants are gathered, they will move off. But if you are not able to move off with the participants because you are late for whatever reason, or if you cannot find your workshop locations, don't worry, just ask any of the volunteers that are there for directions and they will guide you to your workshop location. You will probably be late for a few minutes, but you will get there, so there's no need to be stressed out. All right, even if you don't know directions, doesn't matter, just ask any person you see on the street or ask any of the Urban Sketchers volunteers that you see. When you are in a different country, always watch out for your belongings. When you are seated down and sketching on location, try to have your bags in front of you, zipped up if possible, just to keep your things safe so that they won't get stolen, and watch out for pickpockets. This next tip is for beginners. If you are new to urban sketching and you don't have much experience, I highly recommend you get some practice first before you go for the symposium. So you can practice in your country, just go out and sketch and get some practice so that it's not that overwhelming when you are at the workshops, when you are sketching and learning, because you already have some foundation that you know, that you can rely on. The workshops are suitable for beginners, but if you have some basic knowledge of drawing, that will actually help a lot, because the instructors will be teaching their techniques, but those techniques are actually based on the fundamentals of drawing. So if you know some basic fundamentals of drawing, that will really help a lot. If you are totally new to drawing or urban sketching, I highly recommend you get this book called Keys to Drawing by Bert Dodson, which will teach you the fundamentals of observation drawing, or you can check out some of the online drawing courses that I have. The links are in the video description below. While you are at the workshop, learn as much as possible from the instructor and write some notes, because chances are you are probably going to be a bit overwhelmed, so you may not be able to remember everything. So take as much notes as possible. And sometimes when you are taking breaks while sketching, look at what other participants are drawing or sketching, and you can learn from them as well. So you can learn from your mistakes, you can learn from the instructors, you can also learn from your fellow sketchers. For me, when I'm waiting for the paint to dry, I will usually just stand up and stretch, maybe walk around, do some recording, take some photos, or talk with my friends. So that can be something you can try. And try to take some photos as well, just to remember your symposium. So what are some of the essential items you should absolutely bring? For me, it would be a folding stool, which allows you to sit wherever you want to sit, preferably under the shade, and a waterproof hat, which is very useful against sun and rain. And lastly, a pair of comfortable shoes, because there will be lots of walking involved, so you really want to have comfortable shoes that you can walk on. If your bag is heavy, or if you bring along too much art supplies, you may want to use one of those rolling luggage or rolling bags so that it's less tiring. Because if you carry around a heavy backpack and you're doing a lot of walking, it can get quite tiring very quickly. One thing I noticed at the symposium is many people like to create name cards or postcards or little items to give to people. Name cards are good, but what's even better are stickers with your contact information or your social media pages, because with name cards you actually need a pocket or a place to keep the name card, but with stickers you can just stick it very easily onto the pages of the sketchbook. So I highly recommend you make stickers instead of name cards to give out to people. The last thing I want to say is don't be too stressed out at the symposium. And it's easy for me to say that because I have been to several urban sketches symposium and I have been to many international sketching trips. The reason why I want to say this is because it can get quite overwhelming at the symposium, because the days are just packed with so much activity. And there is so much to take in when you are learning from the instructor, when you are walking around and you have to rush from places to places because you have limited time. You may also want to do some shopping at a sponsored booth and hang out with your friends. So things can get quite overwhelming. So try your best to be relaxed and just go with the flow. And things are not going to happen or go smoothly all the time. So sometimes negative things can happen. For example, you may wake up late for a workshop, which is all right. You can be a few minutes late for a workshop. It's just that you have to spend some time to find out where your workshop has moved to. If you lose some items, well, losing your sketchbook can be a bummer, but it's not like the end of the world. If you lose some art supplies, don't sweat it. You can just buy those art supplies at the sponsor booths. So try your best to just relax and stay calm. And don't expect to produce masterpieces or great sketches at the symposium, especially when you are a beginner, because many of the instructors actually spent years to perfect their craft and their techniques, and they are at this symposium to teach you those techniques. It's just not possible for you to learn all those techniques and reproduce those techniques with perfection in that short amount of time. To get better, you need time to practice. You really need time to accumulate the experience. So don't be too hard on yourself if your sketch turned out bad or your sketch doesn't look like anything the instructor is showing you. So yeah, don't be too stressed out by that. What's more important is learn from your mistakes and ask the instructors as many questions as possible on how you can actually improve, like what's wrong with your sketch, how can you improve, and take notes, like take lots of notes, because you won't be able to remember all the things that are said at the workshop. I think I've pretty much covered everything I wanted to say. If I have missed out on anything or if you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. And do check out the many urban sketching videos that I have created over the years, especially those videos that I have created at the symposiums, just to get a feel of what it's like to go to an international sketching event. Alright, I hope this video is useful. See you guys in the next one. Bye!